Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm doing a personal replay analysis for Drevoed. He sent me this replay on my stream and we're gonna take a look at it, go through like what I think would be the best strategy, how either player could have improved to their strategy, etc. So first things first, we're gonna take a look at the set and I'll tell you my initial impressions. So Energy Matrix is a very good absorber, so if not for other units in the set possibly affecting it, this would be a high econ strat, but of course Tattoo Nullifier and Amperilla are very, very strong against Energy Matrix. Tattoo specifically like completely nullifies the 5 health, so Energy Matrix is quite terrible against Tattoo. And if you were to do a slow strat with Energy Matrix, then Amperilla would just completely crush through. So you could try and get Energy Matrix plus Amperilla on like a low econ, but I think a fast Tatsu strat would probably deal with that pretty well. We also have Chieftain for Soak. Again, also quite bad against Tatsu. Don't think we'll see that. Venge is pretty interesting though, because if you were to commit to a low econ red strat and like try and rush out Tatsu on 12 drones, then Venge Cannon would like hard counter that basically. But as long as you don't like overcommit to an aggressive strategy, I think you would get there. Smorkus makes Tatsu strats a lot safer though, because if you buy 2 Smorkuses, you're not committed to buying Tatsus every turn. You can just click the Smorkuses by defense, and often that would be enough to defend against a Venge strat, depending on how fast it is. So I think we've got all the bases covered. Like Flame Animus likely to get bought here, it's quite good. It's just a very efficient way of getting red, so let's see what happens. Speedy the Great going for a high econ strat. Drevoed disagrees. Going for the quick Flame Animus with a regular Animus as well. I like this strategy, although it might be a bit of an overcommitment. Speedy is being quite greedy with the 3rd NG though, and setting up Apollo right away. So Apollo can obviously snipe the big units like Amperilla and Tatsu. Most notably it snipes Tatsu, of course. It's a very high value unit. You don't want Apollo sniping that ideally. But Drevoed doesn't have to buy it. Like now that Speedy has set up the Apollo and Drevoed doesn't have any Tatsus yet, he can just continue spamming Smorkus Grimbotch, and that seems like a good strat. I would think Drevoed should buy another Flame Animus maybe. Maybe not, because Apollo probably snipes Smorkus here. But Steel Splitter is quite inefficient, so I'm not sure. Yep, and Apollo's sniping the Smorkuses. Pretty standard stuff. Looks like Drevoed might not have enough damage. And also, like, okay, I feel like at this point, because he's gonna have the 3 damage and the Apollo snipe, an energy matrix would be insanely good here. Like, he could even skip this wall against the 1 damage. Just allow the engineer to get breached and buy an energy matrix with the 2nd blast forge. The one problem with that is that he's on a very low drone count, so he can't even afford to spend red as well as blue. Yeah. So let's talk about energy matrix for a second. Because sometimes skipping it is correct, but sometimes not. And I feel like in this case it's very much not skippable. Compared to a wall, energy matrix is the same soak efficiency as walls, right? It's 8 in blue for 2 blue for 5 defense. If you compare that to 2 walls is 10, so it's like 2 walls compared to energy matrix is 2 more gold for 1 defense, which is what most people would consider a fair trade. But the fact that energy matrix gives you 4 absorb as well basically means you're getting 2 or nullifying 2 attackers for free, which is absolutely insane value. And the fact that Drevoed is not able to take advantage of that is really hurting him. So it seems like what's happening here is he's probably losing this game because he didn't get enough drones. If he had like 15 or even 13 drones, he could buy the 2nd blast forge, get energy matrix, and still be able to spend some of his other resources. Like, he would be able to buy a Grimbotch with the red. He would be able to afford 2 steel splitters if he ever wanted them. 10 drones just you can't really get away with. At best, you're like buying a matrix, and you need engineers every turn, of course, for granularity. But even in his position, it might be worth getting matrix, especially rather than the 2 walls that he bought. Even if he buys a blast forge and never uses the 2nd blue ever again after the matrix, it's still worth it. You're nullifying 2 attackers, so a blast forge is worth less than 2 attackers. Yeah, and now Speedy's getting ahead in damage. Drevoed finally gets the matrix, but I feel like he did it like 3 turns too late. I'm not sure whether that would have changed the course of the game. Probably not, looking at this. Like, my initial impression of the set was that Apollo should probably never get bought. Even sniping Smorkases is not good enough value for Apollo to be worth it. Because you don't really want 3 blast forges. You want 2, and you want flame animuses and maybe a regular animus. So I think this was just a matter of Speedy being able to take advantage of energy matrix like 8 turns earlier than Drevoed, which is, energy matrix is such insane value that if you take advantage of it earlier, you might just be ahead. And it seems like that was the case. Like, obviously Drevoed rushed out a bunch of damage. However, eventually his damage peaked and he could no longer buy any. He may not have ramped his damage efficiently enough. Like, this isn't bad, but you might be able to do a little bit better with a higher econ. The presence of Apollo kind of makes it so that you can't commit to a low econ strat with Tatsu. So if your opponent does go for Apollo, that means you need more drones than 10, because then you can no longer get your fancy quad red units here. It seemed good for Drevoed at first, but as soon as Speedy started buying damage, Drevoed just couldn't afford to defend as well as attack. So I think Apollo was like a hard counter to a low econ strat. And I think that's where he went wrong. Because if we try a higher econ line and compare it to what happens if our opponent buys Apollo, I think it ends up being a lot better. Like maybe just Spy Blast Forge here. And instead of getting Animus, get 2 drones. Something like that. I fear I may have even gone too low econ again. We're still up damage, which is worth something, but I think what we can learn from this is that this line definitely worked better than the original game. So if we went even higher econ, then I think it would work even better. That looked kinda close, but I think the Apollo would eventually win. So we would need to do something even more high econ than that. Well, the Apollo player definitely ramping up a lot of damage here. In fact, they're just ahead in every way now. I may have misread the set. Maybe because none of these attackers are specifically exceptional. Apollo can get there in an energy matrix set. Because buying damage when 4 absorb is on the table is a bit underwhelming. Like, all of this investment is only dealing 3 damage to start with. I guess Apollo is better than I gave it credit here. So if Apollo becomes the best strategy here, then both players would probably buy a ton of drones. Get Apollo later. And just do a similar build to what I did here. That seems to be the best strat in the set, as far as I can tell. Like, you wouldn't buy Apollo as early as this. I think you would delay it at least 1 turn. Depends what your opponent does, of course. Like, if they're rushing damage, then getting Apollo earlier is great. But if we were both mirroring Apollo, then you would want to get it later. And I think it would be best to start with Conduit, actually. And do something like this. Both players start with Flame Animus. I think this would be a good Apollo timing. Around this time. Seems like the best timing for Apollo. Yep, I'm pretty sure this is the way the set is best played. Now with the new knowledge that Apollo is going to get bought in the set, you can't get Tatsu or Amperilla. Like, Amperilla is sometimes correct against Apollo, but only against like very late Apollos. Like, Apollo as a reaction to Amperilla sometimes doesn't work. But if both players are just getting Apollo in their opening, then Amperilla and Tatsu are unlikely to work. So yeah, that's it for this personal replay analysis. I'll see you guys next time.